65 horsepower trap. That might pop wide open, Rats.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the TPT podcast. We got a big time guest, and not just guests, we got family, but also a former Chiefs DB and CFL DB, Morris Lolar. Welcome to the show. How are you doing? It's good to have you on the TPT podcast.
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, and I was very worried if you was going to get my last name right. Most people don't get it right. That would have been a problem, wouldn't it?
As we're family, it'll be easy. That would have been a problem since we are family. The weirdest I've ever gotten was Lolar. So I've heard some weird ones. You probably heard probably heard Lolar. Probably get that a lot.
All the time, except when I'm in Canada. You know, in Canada they pronounce it right, which is crazy.
Wow. So speaking of Canada, we know you spent some time over there in the CFL and in the NFL with the Chiefs. Just talk about a little bit as we get to know you here on the TBG podcast. Some of the teams you were with and some of the players that you came across in your day and some of the experiences you had.
Oh yeah, for sure. One of the things, coaching football now at the collegiate level, what I always try to explain to my young fellas that I recruit and that the ones that I also coach, getting to your final goal is not always the way that everybody thinks it's supposed to be. You go through high school, you're an All-American, you go to college, you're an All-American, then you get drafted. Well, I'm one of those that kind of jumped around a little bit and it took a little ways to get there. And I tell them, the NFL is full of stories. So my story was, I went to I was, pretty dang good in high school. I went to a Division I school. I didn't like it. I didn't fit in. It wasn't good for me. So I went to a NAI school back in Wichita, Kansas. For there, I was fortunate enough to get on the free agent contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. I was literally the last guy that was released in '92. And I had an opportunity to go be on the practice roster. But instead of going to the practice roster, I chose to go make a little bit of money in Canada. And I totally fell in love with the game. I fell in love with the country, and I stayed up there. Once I finished playing, I bounced around and did some workouts for some NFL teams. But it just didn't fit right for me. My body was starting to tear down and get beat up. So I jumped into coaching, and that feeds my competitive, juices and my needs. So I've been doing that since been coaching since '98, I believe, and I'm still going strong.
Yeah, that's awesome. There again, the NFL it's a different breed, and some people, can reach the mountaintops in the NFL, and some people get into coaching like you. And obviously you've succeeded in coaching as we're seeing right now. But going back to Canada, you had success over there, of course. What's the type of level of play over there in Canada compared to the NFL? I've heard a lot of the times that the drop off isn't that crazy. Maybe, that wasn't the case or was the case when you were in Canada when you played, but we know obviously you spent some time coaching over there as well. What's the talent level like over there in Canada?
Well, it's a very small drop off. The thing, Ocho Cinco, when he went over to Montreal, they asked him the same question, and he was very candid with it. And he was like, there was some dudes that he went against that could just. I mean, it's like the NFL. You have guys. If this is your craft, this is what you do. You're going to be pretty darn good at it. Now, you get used to the players that you're playing with. You get used to the practice times. You just kind of get used to it. And there's not as big turnover in the CFL as there is in the NFL. So some of the things are a little faster. Some of them are a little slower. It's more of a passing game. So it fit, my build a little better than the grind and everything like that. Some of the rules, I would love to see Patrick Mahomes or a quarterback of that stature go over there and where he has 2 downs or 3 downs to 3 downs to make 10 yards, and he's throwing the ball all over the place. He'll break all kinds of records just off his athletic
Yeah.
ability and his knowledge. So the talent level, you're going to find some guys that played in the NFL, that won Super Bowls in the NFL. And for whatever reason, they didn't sign the contract that they wanted to sign in the NFL, and they got into the CFL and they're thriving. So it's about the same. It's just like, over here, you got some guys that shouldn't be in the NFL that are in the NFL, for whatever reason, they end up sticking. Guys that go from one team that are released from 8 teams, and then they go to the right team and they're all pro for 20 years, it seems like. So talent level, you have some, it's like any place. You're going to have some guys that can get it done, and you're going to have some guys that are, kind of mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, you're even seeing guys now, quarterback for the BC Lions. He signed a contract with Jacksonville recently. And even former Kansas City Chiefs players like Trent Green, they started in Canada. Jeff Garcia, you have guys that did well in Canada. Of course, we all know Warren Moon started in Canada with Edmonton and made his way over to the NFL. Yeah, Doug Flutie was there for 6-7 years, made his way back to the NFL, dominated. Want to get into something that you just talked about for a little bit, is a guy like Patrick Mahomes. You were around the team a little bit when you had guys like Marty Schottenheimer and towards the Joe Montana era with the Chiefs, but now you have a big time quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, and he's got a matchup coming up against Joe Burrow. And obviously you've been in Missouri and Kansas a long time. What is it like having a guy like Patrick Mahomes in the building? We know he's got the bum angle and some of the stuff like that. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But what is it like for the Chiefs to have a guy like Patrick Mahomes? Some of the matchups going into the Cincinnati game.
You always have a chance. You're never out of the game. If there's some ticks still on the clock and you're within reach, hey, you got a chance. And there's something special about a guy like that. When I was in Kansas City, we had Joe Montana, and I left there and ended up going to Montreal, and we had Damon Allen, who's Marcus Allen's brother, and he was that type of player. He could run, he could shake a guy, and he had a strong enough arm, and he was smart enough to play the game. So when you have a general like that, no matter what level of football that you're playing, it's all quarterback driven. If you got a guy that can spin that thing, that can make great decisions, not lose a game, not necessarily win them all, but not lose one, it's a heads up, especially being a defensive guy. Hey, we gave one away, but we know our offense is going to get it back, so we can play a little more aggressive.
Yeah, and speaking of the defense, Patrick Mahomes, again, we just talked about a little bit of a bum ankle. You're a defensive guy, and the DB position has been a question for the Chiefs for a long time. And that's something, if you watch the Chiefs game, you're probably, when the Chiefs give up these big plays, sometimes you're probably scratching your head. We could probably use you over there coaching some of these guys up sometimes. Maybe back in your prime, but it's a very young secondary over on the Chiefs side. And we know about Jamar Chase, a guy like Jamar Chase. When you played, you probably went up against some big time receivers. We got a guy like Jamar Chase, who the Chiefs are going to have to figure out how to defend. You got 3 rookies over there trying to defend this Cincinnati offense. What are some of the things that you think that Steve Spagnuolo can do for the Kansas City Chiefs to slow down this Bengals offense?
Well, you got to get physical with them within the first 5 to 10 yards, and you have to make that official throw that flag. When the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, they had a very aggressive secondary. They're not going to throw all those flags. It's like holding. They're not going to throw them all. Now if you're blatant with it, but if you go up and you hip check a guy stealing that from hockey, they're usually not going to call that. So you have to be physical with them. You got to get those receivers off their line, off their mark, and make the quarterback just hold it just a little bit longer and not, get his feet a little antsy. Now it's hard to do that with Burrows, but if you can get at him, you'll be able to disrupt some of the passing plays that they call. But I think it's going to be, you have to be physical, and you're going to have to put bodies on receivers.
Yeah, so that's something that they've been talking a lot about with the Chiefs defenders, because that official's not going to call a flag every single play. And you may have to force him to call a flag every single play. When you got a guy like Jamar Chase, and a lot of people think he's, when they see him, he's like a 6'4", 6'3" wide receiver. He's not. He's a 6'1" guy, but he can go get the ball.
Oh, yeah.
And Snead is one of the bigger corners they have. So you're going to have to bump them at the line. You're going to have to be physical with them. That's why the Ravens had a chance for them a couple weeks ago. They were physical with the Cincinnati Bengals, gave them a chance. So you're right. If you can give time with Chris Jones, Frank Clark, to give them a little bit of time to slow down Joe Burrow, it's going to go a very, very long way. We're also going to get into some more of the playoffs, some of your takes for some of the other NFC teams here coming up on the TPT podcast. All right, everybody, we are back with Morris. We're excited to talk a little bit about the NFC side. We're going to get back into the Kansas City Chiefs, as we just talked about some of the defensive things they need to do. So on the NFC side, you have two defenses now moving more back into the defense. The Eagles and the 49ers defense, there's really no, drop off when you go to the NFC side. The Chiefs defense, they find ways. But these two defenses, they're big time defenses. So you have a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. We know they have a pretty good secondary. What are some of the things that Brock Purdy, a young quarterback, because again, he's going up against a lot of veterans over on the Eagles side. He's the last pick of the draft, and he's a rookie quarterback. What are some of the things he can try to do versus this secondary, try to get the ball out quick versus these DBs and this pass rush of the Eagles?
Isn't that kind of a great story? The last guy has a chance to go to Super Bowl. That would be the story. You want to talk about a heavyweight fight. These are complete teams. And it's going to be a matter of who's going to make the most mistakes. Now, I'm going to come flat out and say it. I have Philly winning this, okay? And this is why I have Philly winning it. I don't know if you can ask Brock to win a game, okay? You can tell him to manage the game and not lose it, but at some point he's going to have to win that, because we know those guys in green are going to come and they're going to score points and they're going to be physical and they're going to hit you and they're going to really, toe the line upon, is it a penalty? Is it not? So it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be an interesting game. Now, McCaffrey can go off.
That's different.
That's a totally different beast. If you got a guy like him that can make you miss, that can take off on you, that does a pretty good job of blocking, that does a great job of catching the ball out of the backfield. But Philly's pretty dang tough. So that's the game that I want to see. That's the one that I'm interested in. So if Brock can hold up, they have a chance. But I think Philadelphia's defense is going to stifle him a little bit, and they're going to be able to get after him.
Yeah, and I always like to say this, and you may be a defensive guy, you may not agree with me. In the modern era of football, you have to have a defense to win a chip. You can't go in and have one of the worst defenses or have a bottom tier defense. But look at a team like the Chiefs. They're never a top 10 defense. They make plays when need be, and they do have playmakers. But when you get into playoffs, it's about your head coach and your quarterback. Sooner or later, on a 3rd and 14 or on a long pass, your quarterback has to make a play. Your defense can go a long ways, but eventually you have to make a play. Your quarterback is going to have to do something that other quarterback did not do. So I completely agree with you. Brock Purdy, when it comes down to it, he's going to have to go out there and win a game. If it's not versus the Eagles, it's going to be in the Super Bowl versus Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes.
And he hasn't had to do that. No one's made him do that.
No.
Now Dallas could have, but Dak Prescott was throwing all those picks and making those wrong reads and stuff like that. I mean, if Dallas scores or their kicker makes an extra point and there's more confidence in him putting the ball through the uprights, that's a different game. Now you're asking Brock to have to win a game, and I think that's what Philly's going to make him do. Can you win a game without making the mistakes?
I agree. It's going to be too much for Brock in Philly. We know how nasty it gets in Philly. That crowd, that team, they're going to be physical.
That weather,
yeah. You know, Brock, I don't think he can get it done versus a nasty Eagles team like this. Now we're gonna head back over to the Chiefs side of things. You know this place talking about nasty weather and a nasty place to play, Arrowhead. Talk a little bit about what it's like in Arrowhead, because you know you played in Arrowhead. You know, you played during the Marty Schottenheimer years where it was really getting loud. That noise level is something else. Talk a little bit about that and what this round four before you get into it. This is round four between Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. These fans are going to be going crazy. What should the Chiefs fans expect? And what is Arrowhead like?
Oh man, it's crazy. You know, one of the top fan bases, you know, arguably the best top fan base. You know, the Raiders are right there, you know, because
Yes.
anytime your fans will jump out the stands and beat you down, that's a different beast. But I think that the fans are going to be the big difference. The last three times that Kansas City's played them, they jumped on Cincinnati, and you go and get a hot dog now. We're going to go out in the parking lot and we're going to finish, whatever we're doing out there. And then all of a sudden, hey, you got to come back in. It's a game now,
Yeah.
and now Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs know, hey, these guys aren't going to lay down. They're going to inch by inch and try to get back into this. So I'm definitely thinking that Kansas City is going to put the nail in the coffin and going to hand it to them. You're going to see a different Kansas City team because they have been embarrassed by them. And there's something about getting embarrassed, and there's something about, playing in front of your home crowd. And man, if you want to talk about loud and crazy, that's Kansas City. Get backed up if you want to, and come out there and be doing this or trying to. It's a difference maker, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest turning points in this game.
Yeah, and a little bit, you probably know this better than anyone. When you have that team where time and time again, where you're like, we just can't get over that hump. But on paper, you look at the Chiefs team, they're just as good as the Bengals, if not better in most of the parts. Offensive line, quarterback, but I'm going to take Mahomes 10 out of 10. Coaching and other aspects like that. And they're talking traps, like you said, they're calling it Burrowhead, and when people, those players see that, they see that. Players see that. They may act like they don't, but they see that. And you just said it, the Chiefs are going to be ready. So let's get into your final game prediction of the Bengals. Give me some of your storylines that you think are going to come from this game. Chiefs, Bengals, AFC Championship. What do you got?
Let me tell you this. When I was the head coach of an indoor football team, I had my offensive center. He had a high ankle sprain. One of the craziest things that my trainer did, and this guy worked with the Falcons, and instead of booting him up, he put a cast on it. He casted his leg because he didn't want any flexion, any movement, any more tearing to happen. 2 weeks later, the guy's able to play, and very minimal pain with him. And why I'm saying this is it's going to depend upon, a lot of it's going to depend upon how Patrick Mahomes is healing. Because they're going to make him have to move out of the pocket. They're going to drop 8, and they're going to say, you have to move out of the pocket. We're going to rush 3. You're going to have to move. You're going to have to be a mobile guy to make plays. And I think that in the end, he's going to be able to make those plays simply because he's a carefree type of quarterback. He's going to throw the ball and fit the ball where he needs to fit it. So I'm thinking that, once again, Kansas City's not going to let up this time. They're going to continue to play. The running game has to be effective, and the defense has to be able to stop the run against Cincinnati, which that's cliche. Everybody has to stop the run, but Kansas City, if they're able to run the ball with just a little bit and get Patrick Mahomes to be able to step up instead of running to right or left, step up in a pocket and make some plays. It shouldn't be an easy game, but it should be a relaxed game.
So what is your final score? Do you have a score for us?
Oh, I couldn't tell you a score. I'm thinking if I was going to go there, I would say 38-17.
38-17.
That's 21.
So you're going Chiefs 38-17.
Yep. I think they're going to put it on them. I think there's something that they have that. They got to prove it. They have to prove it.
This is
And
the
there's
last
nothing like,
monkey on their back.
this is it. You know what? I'm gonna ball up my fist and I'm gonna slug you in the face and not stop until the referee tells me to stop. And
There
I
you
think
go.
that's
Old school
the
football.
mindset they're doing.
Love the picks. Love it, love it, love it. All the Chiefs fans on this podcast are going to love hearing this. Big time win for the Chiefs. Morris, anything before we go you'd like to shout out? We love to have our guests on here shout out what they want. We know you're still coaching. Tell us a little bit about that before you go.
Well, you know, I'm at Missouri Valley College. We're in Marshall, Missouri, about an hour and a half east of Kansas City, right off 70, in between Kansas City and Columbia. Great school, NAIA school. We have over 32 sports. Believe it or not, we got shotgun sports. We got girls wrestling, boys and girls volleyball. It's a great campus, great atmosphere. You know, the Valley will roll, you know, and we're bucking up and getting ready and bringing in some great talent, some great student athletes to turn this thing around and get it back where it's supposed to be at. So that's about all I got is, you know, every opportunity that I get, I want to bring good guys in and make this a better place.
Morris, thank you so much for being on the TPT podcast. Brought great analysis, what the Chiefs need to do, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, no problem. Anytime, cuz.
Of course. All right, guys, that'll do it for the TPT podcast today. We will see you guys next time on the TPT podcast.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell, follow us on all social media, and check out our videos each week.